My name is Beth Santos, and I'm president of the Women's Business Association at Kellogg. Nicole over here is sitting and filming right now. For the people who aren't able to make it, she is the president of the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club. We are super excited that you guys are here. We have this really cool program worked out. Oh, thank you for turning off this. So we're going to have some panel discussion. We're going to have some discussion among ourselves to talk a little bit about the issue of women in technology, or if there is an issue about women in technology. And with that, I will let Tasha take it from here. Great.
Thank you. So that looks really uncomfortable, Nicole. Are you going to be able to do that?
There we go.
Okay. So my name is Tasha Seitz. I am currently the Chief Investment Officer for Impact Engine, which is an accelerator program for startup companies that are launching businesses that have a positive impact baked into their product or service. And prior to joining the team sort of on a near full-time basis this past year, I was a partner at JK&B Capital, which is a technology venture capital investment firm. And I have been doing that since the dawn of the internet, back in the late 90s. So that's the perspective I bring, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight, moderating this great panel of folks up here. So I've been watching and observing the Chicago technology and entrepreneurship scene for almost 18 years now. And I will tell you there's been very much of a sea change, particularly over the last 5 years in terms of the energy, the number of successful and growing successes in the Chicago area. And there's a real just energy and center of the tech community here. And you know, did anybody see or read the book Half the Sky? So, ooh, a few, yeah. So the whole idea, this is a quote by Chairman Mao, which I just discovered when I Googled it earlier today. And the idea is that women hold up half the sky. And so if we leave women behind, we're leaving, you know, tremendous resource and talent behind us. And so that's really, I think, the frame for the conversation tonight. But I think I'll start by maybe just doing introductions down the road. Just a little bit about who you are, what your perspective you bring to the conversation tonight. And then Genevieve will let you roll straight into it.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Hi everyone. My name's Claire Liu, and I'm the CEO of Know Your Company. It's a software product that helps CEOs get to know their company better, get to know their employees better. But yeah, I'm really excited about this panel tonight for a variety of reasons. I think it's just a subject that just doesn't get really talked about enough, and I guess for me, at least personally, as I've started a company, worked at an early stage company, and now am running another software company, it's it's just something that I've noticed in interacting with tons and tons of CEOs all the time, is that none of them ever really look like me, ever. and that's on a variety of scales. That's in age, that's in race, and that's particularly in gender. And so yeah, it's something that I've thought about particularly very recently. But yeah, I'm excited to talk more about it. Just to give you a little bit more background. So I also went to Northwestern for undergrad, so that's what brought me here to Chicago. I studied learning and organizational change, and so my passion is very much around understanding how people communicate at work and how people can communicate better at work. And so thinking through especially these gender issues in the workplace is something that, I look forward to talking about. And then, when I graduated from college, I helped start a company called the Starter League, which Neal can tell you more about in just a little bit. And then, went to go work at another early stage company after that, where I was so frustrated with being unhappy in my job that I decided to leave that company and start my own consulting firm around trying to help employees be happier than I ever was. And so, And so my personal passion has always been around how do you help employees give and receive honest feedback in the workplace. After starting that consulting practice, I was essentially, in a lot of ways, given a company that was built by Basecamp, or formerly 37 Signals, and that's Know Your Company, so that was a year ago. And was asked to run it as the CEO, so I've been doing that for a year. And I guess that's what brings me here. Great.
Sharon?
Hi, I'm Sharon Schneider, and I'm the CEO of Moxie, which is an end-to-end marketplace, resale for baby and kids clothes, and in the next couple weeks, maternity as well. So there's Gates Foundation set up their strategic planning and evaluation unit, and then just became kind of frustrated with the state of American philanthropy, where 95% of your assets are invested in, I don't know, big oil, and then 5% of your assets you give to Greenpeace. How's that working out? So, to me it was like the David and Goliath, and the charity dollars were continually getting drowned out and beat up on by the business, the pure profit dollars. And so I became passionate about social entrepreneurship, impact investing, the idea that can't businesses do both? Can't they, make money and do good in the world? And ended up leaving there to start my company about 3 years ago. We went through, again, just about 3 years ago, got selected to go through Accelerate Labs at the time, now Techstars Chicago, and was one of the first people. It was just when 1871 was opening. So we were one of the very first residents, along with Starter League, and noticed the dearth of women every day. And so just started kind of collecting it. When I'd see one at the Friday happy hour particularly, I'd start, talking to them and say, hey, we should start getting together. I started doing these regular Wednesday lunches. I called it Ladies Who Lunch. I thought that was good. We were the opposite, the Ladies Who Lunch. And that's kind of developed over time. Most recently, I haven't been in residence at 1871 for a while, but I helped organize the Women Tech Founders event that happened a couple weeks ago. We had 200-some people in this room, including 40 women founders of tech startups. So that was really exciting. I'm excited to build on that momentum with students, particularly with students, because our focus is the pipeline. So that's me.
Hello everyone, my name's Neal Sales-Griffin. I guess I'm here to add a different perspective.
Thank you.
I'm really happy to be here. Honored. I started a company called the Starter League. I'm the, co-founder and CEO of it. We've been around for about 4 years now. We're a software school that teaches beginners how to not only code, but also design and ship web applications. But the bigger kind of context and what's important to me, and I guess the perspective I can bring here, is the focus of my business isn't just on the skill development, but it's also about solving meaningful problems with these skills and software. So not only on people getting jobs, but more so also people trying to come up with new solutions to ideas. And one of the most important things that I've learned and experienced in having taught now, I guess nearly almost 1,200 people have gone through our program in the past 3.5, 4 years, is when you're trying to build something, and when we're teaching all these skills, it's important to have domain experts when you're trying to solve a problem. And domain experts is basically saying, like, you understand the problem, you've experienced it yourself, or you know someone that you're close to that you can really connect with. And I think that's why I'm so excited to be here now, because I think a lot of the problems that are being solved with software sometimes are being solved by people that don't fully understand the perspective of the people they're trying to help. So, case in point, having more women involved through our school and entering this industry, more products are going to get built that are going to keep your needs in mind. And I've seen that importance day in and day out. And I think over a third of our students have been women, but that's not nearly enough. And we've been trying to really, figure that out, how to increase that pipeline. How do we teach more people? How do we teach people that are already in the workforce a new set of skills so that more women can break into technology? So I'm super excited to talk about that, because I'm trying to get on the path of having more people like Genevieve and Sharon and Claire start companies. Coming out of our school, that's what we teach people how to do. So thanks for having me.
Hi. I just hit myself in the face. I have 3-year-old twins. I have 3-year-old twins. That's all I'm going to say. 3-year-old twins. I think they're trying to kill me. In the words of Amy Poehler, I think they're trying to kill me. So anyway, I am Genevieve Thiers, founder of a couple of things. But first, I'm going to say that I am a user of Sharon's company and a user of Neal's company, and they're awesome. And if I'd known about the pregnancy stuff, I would have saved my pregnancy pants. I was like, I burned them. I was like, never again. You have twins, that sort of thing happens. So anyway, I'm here, which is a start. And second of all, I founded something called SitterCity.com. Has anyone used that? Do we have any moms in the room? How many moms? Oh, make, by the way. We have an amazing new product. So we have over 10 million users nationwide, or well, internationally actually. We're in Canada and the UK as well. And basically we're like Match.com, but for parents and caregivers. But our newest product is extremely exciting. It's Uber for caregiving. So we are basically now pre-screening a whole bunch of amazing, awesome people and hand delivering them to your door. You have to just look at, 3 20-second videos and then just, click one, and she shows up. It's awesome. So I've used it a lot, as you can imagine.
Can they show up tomorrow morning? Because CPS is canceled.
They can, and do it now.
Okay.
No, we'll talk. I mean, they can do it now. I mean, seriously, like I show up and I'm like, my phone's dead. I'm leaving. See you later. And I just, it's like a survival tactic when you're a mother of twins. It's just, someone else's problem for a little while. So anyway, I'm here. I have been chasing another dream for a couple of years. I'm on the board of Center City. I actually am also an opera singer, which is completely and utterly random, but I've been having some success. I just did a Carnegie Hall debut. I have a Lincoln Center debut in March.
Wow.
I know. It's going to be fun soon. If anyone happens to be in New York on March 21st, I actually literally have 10 tickets and only 4 people in them. So, if anyone wants to see me sing some opera, please let me know. On March 21st at 2 p.m. at Lincoln Center. All right. So, I don't know what I'm doing with my life right now. I have no clue, but I might have another company at the pike just for kicks. I have no idea. Every day I'm like, no, I can't do it because I have kids. Okay, fine, I can. So, I'm living it. I am living it, people. And on that note, let's talk about women in tech. So, I sent a document to Tasha. I think that I've gotten more scattered in my speaking, Tasha.
I think so. I think in 5 minutes she's used it all up talking about
It needs to be focused. It needs to be laser focused.
You got this.
Oh, I got this, Neal. All right, so anyway, we sent this PowerPoint to Tasha, right? And the PowerPoint was basically what went wrong and then how to fix it. Because this is a personal passion of mine, so I'm going to see which of these little buttons moves this forwards. Women in tech. Woohoo! All right, so anyway, there are very few women in tech entrepreneurship because of a broken pipeline that leads us into tech and then leads us, because of a broken pipeline leading into tech, it starts when we're basically 3. And then when we get out of school, the problems start there. So to summarize it extremely quickly, because I know that is what Tasha wants. Basically, when we get into school, I'm sure all of you have lived this, but we get into a situation where guys are expected to know tech and we're not. What happened was back in 1984, and literally in 1984, in a marketing room, a conference room somewhere, somebody was like, hey, let's market computers as gaming devices for boys. What happened at that point was a slow spiral downwards where guys ended up getting equipped just by accident, right? With the tools that they needed to learn tech, but girls did not. So this ended up with a situation that I'm not going to go into in any depth, but it's a very, very bad situation from school onwards for women. I'm not going to talk about the STEM pipeline issues in school. I'm sure you probably live them, so I'm not going to talk about them right now, other than to say that I'm currently working with the mayor's team on making coding mandatory in schools, which evens everything out and creates an equalizing wave, which will show up, 14 years from now and fix everything. So why are we here? I don't know. Back to my point. I will talk to you quickly about what happens to us when we get out of school. Once I can figure out this slide. Okay, so what is happening right now is that women are going into a broken pipeline in school, which leads to virtually none of them coming out as tech leaders. Those that do come out as tech leaders, because we're focusing on what happens after school in this talk, slam into walls right away. The biggest wall that they slam into, of several, the biggest wall that they slam into is at the Series A funding. Women are amazing at seed funding. We actually kick butt on Kickstarter. We kick butt on AngelList. We are better at that than anybody else out there. We are awesome. Look at the stats. But then what happens is we walk into a room, and I'm very sorry to say this because I love Tasha. She's one of my heroes, but almost all VCs are men. They just are. So we walk into a room, and we walk in front of guys, and it's not even their fault either, but the guys are like, I don't get that. I'm sorry. I've never babysat in my life. They will fund the beer company because they understand beer, and they don't understand babysitting. It's not their fault. It's the way it happens. So, given that this whole thing is spieled up, I've been working on a number of solutions to that, but what we're going to talk about today are more. When you slam into that wall at the Series A, it's a problem for everyone. It's a problem for Chicago, it's a problem for the country, it's revenue that's not being received because industries traditionally considered women's industries are not being cracked open and fully monetized. So this is everybody's problem. It's not just some isolated problem in a corner like babysitting, right? People thought that was an isolated problem in a corner. It's a billion-dollar industry hidden in plain sight, and I'm rich, and that's great, right? But that was, I had to do it alone, right? I didn't have any help. So the Series A problem is the big problem. I will say there's one tiny ancillary problem connected to that I also would like us to discuss, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tasha. The ancillary problem that's connected to that is the fact that because there are virtually no women VCs, and VCs, let's face it, are the ones that end up on your board. My board right now is 7 people, 4 of them are VCs because 2 of them did the Series A, 2 of them did the Series B, right? And then it's my husband and the guy that ended up running Center City right now. I'm the only woman, and that happens to us over and over. We're the only woman with 6 or 7 or 8 other men, and it's a babysitting company. I mean, I find that personally kind of hilarious. They're all awesome people. They're dads. They're great. But it's a babysitting company. So what happens then is that there starts to be a sort of skewering of expertise in the room, sort of distribution of expertise in the room. And to be frank, I'm considered to be the one that contributes the mom comments in the meeting. They don't really care about what I say about acquisition or CPA. They don't give a crap because that's what they think they're experts at. And this is their fault. I'm going to say it's not their fault. This is the one thing that is their fault. They're waiting for me to basically say, I'm a mom and I'm interested. It's great. And you know what? I'm a little tired of that. And I think that that's another large, sweeping problem that happens. So I would say the 2 issues that happen are slamming into the wall at the point of raising the Series A. If you don't raise the Series A, you're certainly not going to get to a Series B, right? And if you raise the Series A, if you happen to make it through, it's easy to raise the Series B. But what happens past that point, I say, having raised the Series A and B, is that you're the only woman in the room, particularly when the decisions are being made. So let me pass it over to Tasha now, and the clicker too, after having basically said that this is where we find ourselves, and it's not pretty. It really isn't.
Wow, okay, I'm feeling a lot of pressure right now to speak for my industry.
You should be feeling great. I'm a hot mess over here.
Yeah, okay. So, well, let me give you a little bit of perspective on the venture capital industry, because Genevieve is correct. It is predominantly male, like in the 90s of percents male. In fact, I think the statistic that I saw was, and I don't know how good these numbers are, but they do hold true with sort of my experience, is that it was something like 97% of partners at venture capital firms 20 years ago were men, and now it's 96%. So, so it's getting better, right? 1% every 20 years, it's going to get better. But so a little bit about how the venture industry works. There's lots and lots of money flowing through venture capital, but the firms themselves are still very much a cottage industry. So it's a partnership. They tend to be relatively small partnerships. To be a partner means you're participating in sort of the profit sharing. And so to be invited to be a partner, the existing partners or the founding partners have to believe that you are going to make them money. And so because of some of the challenges that Genevieve talked about in terms of having women founders of technology companies who have been successful and made their investors money, it's a challenge to get more women into the industry because there's really 2 paths in. One is that you come in having made someone money and you come in as a senior person, or you take the path that I took, which is you come in as an associate and you earn your way into partnership by proving yourself and making good investment judgments and sourcing good deals and sitting on those boards and adding value and hopefully one day, exiting and making money for the firm. And so that's sort of how it works. 18 years in the industry, I have not, I've seen inappropriate behavior, nothing as inappropriate as some of what you've seen in headlines, particularly recently. But I've been in a situation where I was negotiating a term sheet with a CEO of a company, happened to be in Texas, and we at my firm have worked as a team on our due diligence process. So 3 of us had been down working with the company. We had multiple points of contact. And the CEO reached out to one of my partners and said, I don't know who you're going to designate as a board member, but I don't want it to be her because she can't go toe-to-toe with my existing venture capital investor. So yeah, so that was probably the most egregious sort of example that I've had. And so, I said, okay, I'll step out. You take this board. Good luck to you, because this guy's can I say this on video? I'm going to behave myself. So that was really the most egregious, and I will admit to having probably a great delight in seeing him get fired later in place as the chief executive, because if he treats other people the way he treated me, that company is not going to be successful. But there are small things that happen too, like I find this hilarious. So I'll be sitting around the board table with all the guys, and one of them will swear, like mildly, like, oh shit. And then they'll look at me and I'm like, I'm sorry. And then I'll drop an F-bomb, and so I actually cumulatively drop more F-bombs than I've heard in board meetings, that's for sure. But anyway, so that hopefully gives you a sense of what some of those dynamics are. If you are an entrepreneur raising money, my recommendation is to look for a firm where there is a woman partner, even if you're not talking to the woman partner, because those are venture capital firms that have concluded that it makes sense to invite a woman into the partnership because they think she will make them money. So with that, I'm going to maybe ask Sharon, since you are founder and chief executive of a business that's targeting women customers, what your experience was like on some interventions that Genevieve's talking about. Do you want me to stop? I can tell you about stats in my portfolio. Just take time to collect yourself.
Yeah. I'm being filmed.
I just swore on camera.
I think one of the most interesting dynamics that I experienced over and over actually had to do with angel groups. So Genevieve mentioned that women do really well with angel groups, and what I found was there are, and I have probably pitched 15 angel groups, from Hyde Park Angels to one called Cornerstone. I went down to one in Columbus. I've been to Golden Seeds. If you're familiar with them, they invest in women entrepreneurs. It's a lot of women doing the investing. And in almost every one, it's 90% men. And when I explain the concept of our business, which is about baby clothes, and the fact that kids go through 7 sizes in the first 2 years of their life, and then they keep outgrowing their clothes every 6 months after that. So you just have to keep replacing their wardrobe, and you have these piles of outgrown clothes that you don't know what to do with, and you always have to go buy the new clothes. It's not like adults where you can wear the same sweater for 10 years because the kids got pants that are 3 inches too short, from last year, and at some point you're very embarrassed and you got to get a new clothes.
On that note, I have another pile for you at home. I need an envelope, actually.
And so whenever this would happen in a mixed room, the women in the audience would be like, yes, this is a company, this is a problem, this is something I get. They're excited, they're asking me questions, they're into it. The men are like, okay, if you say so, baby clothes. They just didn't relate to the problem. And so Hyde Park Angels actually was the lead investor in our seed round, led by their woman managing director, Karen O'Connor, because, and of the probably 15 or 20 angels, it's all 10 female members of Hyde Park Angels. So it came into that because there is such a, if you relate to the problem being solved, then you're much more interested in a company that solves it. And so one of the issues that women face is that by solving our own problems, it's sort of inherently less interesting to funders. So that was definitely one dynamic. The other dynamic that blew my mind was I had one local VC firm that said to me, I had met with a couple of their partners, and they came back and they said, well, here's the thing, and they're all men. They said, we think there's 3 kinds of women.
Right there. Stop right there.
Please tell me about what you think are the 3 kinds of women. And it turned out that what they thought was that wealthy women don't care about price, they're always going to buy new, so they're never going to be your customers. Poor women only care about price, they don't care about brand, therefore they're never going to be your customers. women in the middle who like are trying to balance price and brand or quality might be your customers, but there aren't enough of them. That was their analysis. Like that they pulled out of their butt? I don't know. Analysis, that is, pure. And I said, I'm so sorry that you felt like you had to make up your own data. Let me tell you what my data shows. Here's what the market is actually like. 50% of my customers have household income of $75,000 and above. Another 25% are actually $125,000 and above, and 25% are under $75,000. This isn't about price. This is about philosophy. This is about convenience. This is about where the massive consumer trend is going. But they moved on. I moved on. But that was kind of the mindset, and I thought, here's the problem with it is you never know. Is it because I was a woman? Would they have done that to me? If you're a man pitching, you never are saying, are they doing this to me because I'm a man? You never have to wonder that. And that's the thing. Can I say that they were specifically biased or thought in their mind, oh, she's a woman, she's gonna be less capable, she's gonna be less analytical. They were assuming. Can I say that for sure? Of course not. I have no idea. But you don't even have to ask the question when you're a man pitching. You get the advice. I've been told to bring men with me to pitches. People recommended that, or that, we add male board members. We don't have a single male, not on our board, not on our staff, not on our employees. Like we are an all-female company, and it's just we hire women who are mostly moms themselves who get the problem. So it's just a little bit about some of the challenges that I guess I've had.
Well, I'll tell you something. One of the ironies is we have a company that was in our current cohort at Impact Engine, which was it's about sort of protecting women. The whole idea is that there's a single button you can push for help. All guys, we're like, you need a woman involved with your company, so it goes the other way, but not very often.
And by the way, we did a focus group of 10 women founders who all said they needed a woman in the room, myself included. My husband was there. Every time I raised funding, I wouldn't have gotten it without a male in the room with you. In fact, I have advised women to bring a male into the room too, and every time I do it, I want to sock myself in the head, but there's no other way.
Neal, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to defend mankind.
I'm just here to help.
Maybe just about that hanging for a minute, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Maybe can you talk a little bit to some of the pipeline challenges? Kind of what you're observing. Are women growing or shrinking?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So there's some interesting trends, and I can actually talk about my own program in our classes and the distribution of women and men in our classes because it's interesting. So what's happening is, as Genevieve talked about, and I think she's going to share more about her deck has a lot more detail in it, but there is a extreme lack of women in computer science and technology and engineers. I think out of engineers in the U.S., there's only 11% are women, and I think it's a little better for computer science. There's 26% of computer scientists are women, but what does that even mean? And I'm learning more about this as we're teaching people, and the distribution of our classes is interesting. So it depends on that upbringing and what you're interested in and what you're exposed to and what you think you're capable of, because most of the women that have gone through our program, they err on the side of our night classes and our night classes that actually are focused more on design. And I've interested, there's an interesting trend where 50-50 is men and women in our night classes and our design classes, but 80-20 in our programming classes and our daytime classes. So, and we've been trying to figure this out, and one of the best things that we think we can do ourselves to increase our pipeline for affording more people the opportunity to learn these skills, especially more women and minorities, is to widen the pool of people we can reach out to by targeting specific areas and people that represent these minority groups. But it's been challenging and it's been really difficult because even when you get them in, so we have a number of students now that are women, and as I work with them and we're teaching them in the classes, they look to their male counterparts and they see themselves as a minority in the room, and they feel like they aren't performing as well, that they can't do as good, and they don't have the same background that these men do. And some of a lot of our teachers are male, so everyone that they're learning from and surrounded by they can't fully relate to. So it's just a major problem. Even my own little microcosm of a world with my program in my school, but far beyond that, with college, with people getting your MBAs, the distribution of male to female is just kind of inadequate. And I think the thing I'm most interested in like getting into now and figuring out is what are the actionable steps that I can take, you know, as a founder of a company, but also as a man with this limited perspective and inherent bias given my like who I am and what I am. What are the steps that, you know, men can take to really change this problem? Because the problem, at least based on the stories I've heard so far, comes from men, you know, and our biases. So as I think more about that, I think it would be great to have, I mean, frankly, more men in this room, right? Because here we are talking to a group of people that know the problem. You all experience it, and here I am learning as much as I can. So how can we open up this conversation to get more men aware of not only these kind of anecdotal stories, but also the facts, like the stats, the numbers, like the things that are really compelling on the business side. To say, like, no, having women at the table in the room with their perspective and with their domain expertise is going to allow you to produce better outcomes for the products you're building and for the problems you're trying to solve. And I think there's tons of research that's already proven that having more diverse teams just almost by de facto increases the productivity of the group and the sales and revenue and return on investment. So anyway, as far as the pipeline is concerned, a lot has to change, and I think it ties really back into that early stage education. Because if we have more women learning not only computer science, but also getting into software and technology and hardware and a lot of the STEM categories, I'm gonna have an easier time when I have these new programs where I'm teaching people how to build products and start companies, and I'm struggling to get just a fifth of our class full of women. So anyway, like, yeah, I'm ready to.
Thank you for asking the question. And
Sure.
I think this group, you know, is going to have some ideas for you.
Yes.
So thank you for asking the question, and thanks to those of you who are here tonight exploring these issues. I'm going to now give Claire the floor, but I'm going to turn to our next slide. Did everyone see the Newsweek cover story? Does this look familiar to anyone? Okay, so some of you, this created a lot of controversy a couple of weeks ago. Cover story on basically sort of some of the prevailing cultural attitudes towards women in, they pick on Silicon Valley companies, but in technology companies. And so, Claire, you're a culture person.
Yeah.
You know, and Neal just, I think, opened the question about sort of men's biases and how, you know, they're treated. So, is this a step forward? Is this a step backward to be on the cover of Newsweek in this way, with this image?
Yeah, it's an interesting image. I think that talking about a problem is the first step to solving it, right? So while the image, and when I saw it, and when, you know, I think it was emailed out, I was just like, what the, you know, I think that's maybe a natural reaction, especially, you know, if you're a woman, you can feel very sensitive to any depiction that makes you feel objectified in any way, especially on a nationally circulated publication. But I'm personally always of the belief, and it's what my company does, which is that you can't do anything about something unless you know about it and unless you talk about it. So the fact that we're all in this room having this conversation, this is where it begins. This is the first step. Neal talking about, hey, we have an 80-20 split in our programming classes, and we know that. This is a problem. This is where it starts. And I think talking about it and not being afraid to talk about it and not being afraid to say even the wrong thing or to say an offensive thing or to say a weird question or to, you know, I think it's really important to let go of that fear and to just talk about it. And so the thing that I think it can be talked about in two levels. So the thing that I've noticed a lot as an observer and kind of as living the problem is the bias that happens in the workplace for the tech industry, or just I think even as a woman in a leadership role. I remember growing up as a kid, and I think a lot of young women who are, you know, more type A experience this. I remember being called bossy all the time. And I am really bossy. I still am. But I remember it specifically as a kid because I would be, you know, in art class with other like boys, but they weren't being called bossy. You know, like when I wanted, like it was just me, and I just thought that was really weird. And then and that, you know, continued all the way up till when I was in college and I was student body president at Northwestern, and I remember there was a time when one of the previous executive board members, or it was right before I was student body president, I was on the executive board prior to this, and one of the other male executive board members, he and I got into an argument, and he told me straight up, Claire, I think you're disagreeing with me because you're being emotional. Well, now I'm going to be emotional. Like, are you just, yeah. So it was hurtful just in the sense of he wasn't going to argue me for the content of what I was talking about. He was going to default to the fact of, oh, because you're a woman, what you're saying actually doesn't hold merit because you're arguing it off of your emotions, right? So yeah, that to this day is one of the most offensive things someone has ever said to me. It's interesting because I at the same time have benefited from the most amazing mentors and supporters and professors and role models who I would say all of them have been males, save for maybe one or two. And that's only happened in the past year. And so I've been lucky to be surrounded by men who support me, who believe in me, who trust me for the quality of the work that I do and not for what I happen to look like. And so I'm very grateful for that and aware that it's not like all dudes are bad or anything. It's not that. What it is that there's a bias in our society. There's just a bias by the fact that women didn't, get to vote at the same time that men did. It's just systemic.
So I'm going to ask,
sorry,
just out of curiosity, I'm going to ask the three of you mentors, like male versus female. Did you have female mentors, male mentors, mostly? We know I'm your hero. You did admit that.
You're my hero. I told said I'm your hero.
You're my hero too.
Scary. But no, my husband was my biggest mentor. But I don't know, I'm not a big one for mentors. I was never smart enough to go and find them. So I'm trying to fix that. You are one of my big mentors.
You can do better maybe next time with your next company.
Yeah.
Find yourself some mentors.
I don't know. I have some. I don't know. I should get better at it. Here's the thing. I usually seek out women mentors and there aren't any. I'm in the level now, it's not a game of levels, but when you get to a deck $1 million, $10 million users, 10 million users, and blah, 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 when you get to a certain tier, it's like, you gotta find someone that did it better, and there aren't really men, and there certainly aren't any here. So I honestly don't know. There was one lady here who was amazing, and then she moved to New York. Honestly, and then guys I don't know, I have been brushed off a lot. So, sorry to go through this process of self-discovery with you, but I don't really have any mentors, but I don't think that's my fault. I certainly, I'm like Amy Poehler in Parks and Rec. I'm like, hey, if it were Madeleine Albright, I would chase her down. She'd be at a cafe table across from me in 5 minutes, but there's no one to chase because there's no one. If anything, I usually have 3 women a day trying to get to me, email-wise usually, and I always answer them at 2 a.m. and I'm exhausted by email. That's my rule, but it's usually that way around. So that's sucky. It stinks.
How about you, Neal?
So I find myself, it's funny because I'm sitting next to a couple of my mentors. So Sharon and Genevieve both were super supportive early on. I remember when I was trying to get started, no, come on, be real. She was clowning me in the elevator once, I remember that. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah. So I found myself, I do have a majority of male mentors, I think. I was going through it as, I was trying to listen at the same time, but I would say that I find myself extremely drawn to mentors that represent different perspectives that I don't have. So I think I found far more value in a lot of my women mentors than I have my male counterparts because of their perspective and the insight they bring. They tell me the straight talk from a perspective that I wouldn't know. So I think with that, the only other plug I would put would be, Amanda Lannert is amazing. So many of you all don't know her. Jellyvision CEO, or Alex now, right? Or is that? Oh, sorry. Whoops. So it's Jellyvision CEO. She's awesome too. But there's so many out there. You have to find them though. You have to work really hard to find them. But another interesting thing I realized though is that underrepresented groups tend to unite and help each other find each other. So while I may be a man, I'm a black dude, and there aren't a lot of people that look like me running companies, seriously. So I find actually some sort of camaraderie with
you and Jimmy Odom.
yeah, me and Jimmy, you know, anybody else? You know any of us? So, no.
Miller, George Page, okay.
Yeah, this is great, this is great.
You know what I would say, actually, is on that point, I have found that I just keep convening my peer group. So, you know, Women Tech Founders was sort of about going, why don't we just get together and do this ourselves? And Terry Brax was here, who kind of pulled us together and inspired us and said, we're going to make this happen. We're tired of waiting for some leader on high, you know,
That was awesome,
some
Terry.
anointed leader to do it. We're just going to do it for ourselves. And Rihanna in the back with Food Trace and has been a co-founder and helped organize that as well. That was just us saying, like, we're done waiting for someone to adopt us. You know, if nobody's going to adopt you, get together and like help each other. And you know, I've just been doing that ever since I started at 1871 with the lunches, and you know, I organized like a happy hour and say all the women tech founders I know, let's get together. We just did this event. I think it's sort of you do need someone that's like a year ahead of you. I have a male mentor actually who I consider like a year ahead of me, and I keep like, okay, now what'd you do when you got to this? And he's a great sounding board. But I've relied a lot on my peers as support for each other.
And I love the acronym for your group, by the way. I think it fits really well with some of the response on TechCrunch to this particular one. You guys got to see that? Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was just such a fun image. So I'm going to, kind of toss another one back to you, Sharon, because, at Impact Engine, I feel in some ways of two minds about the fact that we are an accelerator that is really focused on impact companies, because we're singling out impact as something separate from what a good business is. And personally, I think every investor should be aware of and deliberate in thinking about what the impact is of the investments that they make, whatever they choose for that to be. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable, as I say, putting impact in a box, because I think impact should be a lens. And so I'm going to ask, I don't think Claire agrees with me already. So I'm going to ask Sharon, because we were really, really hoping, because you saw Sharon has an amazing background in social impact, we were really, really hoping that she would be part of our first class at Impact Engine. But she went with Techstars. And so I would love to sort of, should women be a category? Should it be a thing? Should there be specific sort of programming for women? Or is that putting us in a box?
Yeah, that is the problem with having special programming for women, is it lets all your other programming off the hook. Is that you go, well, if I have a women's accelerator, then it's okay if Techstars is 9 out of 10 men. And that's actually not okay, right? So I've evolved on this. I like to think I've evolved. When they first announced Femtech, is that the original, right? When they first announced Femtech, I was like, look, we need affirmative action. Because the truth is, diversity does not just happen. It does not just happen because you have good intentions. You need like a specific, defined program that's going to force you to make changes, because this meritocracy, the myth of meritocracy, it needs to be crumbled. And so what I realized over time is that, moving women to the side lets everything else off the hook in a way. And so at this point, I feel like, no, we do not need an incubator for women. However, because women are not a vertical. I mean, the truth is, one of the things we noticed at Women Tech Founders was the incredible diversity of industry, age, expertise, ethnicity, but industry. So the idea that we should all, because we're all women founders, would be able to get in a room and benefit each other, which is the point of an accelerator, right? The point is you have enough in common that you can all learn and advance and whatnot together. Our gender is not enough to mean that our businesses could all benefit like that. And so, I've kind of come to feel that the best solution is actually, rather than a separate program, is to provide the resources and the help to make all the other programs inclusive. So, for example, I think 1871 itself should have a quota that says, like, we aim to have 40% women, if not 50% women, and we're going to seek them out and think about why are more women-founded companies not here? What is it in our selection criteria, and our biases, and our things that is keeping that up? Or every company that is in residence at 1871 should need to adopt a code of conduct that says we don't tolerate, you know, sexist behavior. We don't tolerate, or conferences and events that are held here need to have a code of conduct that, you know, don't allow harassment, don't allow. Like, we need to make, and I don't want to win the Women in Tech Award. I want to win CEO of the Year. Like Amanda Landert did. Yeah, like Amanda Landert wasn't Tech Woman of the Year. She was CEO of the Year.
Yep. That's
right? That's what we need, is we need women in every category. Women, you know, not over here because you're the best woman. Are you kidding? You're the best CEO, you're the best CMO, you're the best startup, you're the best founder. You know, it's sort of, it's about integrating all the other categories, not about having special programs. So that's kind of where I've come to.
And actually, I agree with everything Sharon said, and I'll just say one last quick thing, which is across the focus groups we've been doing as well, because, like, you know, we were called, a bunch of us were called into focus group on FemTech, now Wisdom, now, you know, and it was the board women in 1871, and then it was the tech founders in 1871, and what we were finding across that was the answer was actually to have an incubator around badly represented industries.
Right,
so,
like B2C company, a B2C incubator would naturally have more women because
right, or frankly as well, like industries that are just badly understood, like beauty is not well understood and certainly not fully tapped. Does that make sense? And also, but I'm sure there are African American industries and Asian industries that are not fully tapped. And the idea was to get that idea wrapped into an incubator, which unfortunately didn't further my and all of our, frankly, goals around women in tech as much, but it did, like, show a problem. And on that note, Sharon had an excellent idea too, and I actually need somebody's help from this audience on this. But you know, Sharon's doing an amazing job with Terry on getting and helping everyone, getting the founders in the room, getting the stories told, getting them focused. You know, but the other thing that has been happening is that I've got the story now of the problem and the solution, which is how you get somewhere. You have to define the problem and define the solution, and that's been handed up to as many guys as I can find. I am so annoying. So that's really good, but at the same time, we also haven't run a particular study that was Sharon's idea. So Sharon had the idea to run a study around the untapped potential of overlooked industries. And I think this is a brilliant idea, and I don't have time for it. So is there a researcher, please raise your hand, that wants to take this on, or does anyone know a researcher that has some extra hours that can run a study on the untapped potential? Because that's what we need. If we can put something in front of these men, you know, it's not just a document they're going to look at and, like, flinch at because they're like, oh God, it's Genevieve's problem and solution PowerPoint, here it comes. They're going to look at a number that's like, hey, there's $72 billion you're missing. I mean, that's an exciting opening slide. So please, somebody help me find this person. I don't have time. I have 3-year-olds and they're killing me. So somebody find this person. Two of them, twins.
So I'm just going to sort of jump in because I think one of the interesting, I actually pulled my stats today on my technology portfolio for JK&B Capital to see what it looked like, so how many women were involved. And so I had 19 companies where I was involved at the board level over 17 or 18 years. There was one technical founder who was a woman, 2 CEOs who were not founders, but we actually hired them into those positions. I have 3 fellow female board members, 2 of whom are representing venture capital firms, and 6 sort of senior executive women, sort of spread across the board. A couple of VP engineering, VP sales, a couple of VP marketing, CFO. Impact Engine, by contrast, we have 7 founding female founders, 6 of which are CEOs and 1 of which is a chairman, and I think partly that's because of our focus on social impact baked in. I think those are kinds of businesses that appeal, you know, to women who are more relational sort of by nature. So that was an interesting stat. I'm going to flip to my last headline and ask Neal and Claire to comment on this diversity task force is mostly white and male, like the problem it's trying to solve. How big a problem is
I
it?
saw this. I was like, oh god.
Yeah, so this is interesting. You know, at first when I look at it, you know, I like to put on my hat of reason. So I'm like, okay, wait, I don't want to just like judge the book by its cover. I want to understand what went into this process and why it happened. And it turns out, I guess, you know, reading the article that they selected people to be on this committee that were on the board, on that board that created this task force. So current and former board members. So out of the current and former board members, I believe there were only, I guess, 3 women out of that. So it was like representative of the problem in that sense. So I think there's an inherent issue with that. I would like to think that the group is aware of that, that being the issue, but this new news headline only highlights and emphasizes the problem that we have, meaning like this is like a very historic and systemic issue of the lack of diversity involved in investment. So, you know, as I think about it, I think that understanding something like this is valuable, but I think it's more important to focus on, okay, how do we communicate and convey the importance of being more inclusive when it comes to these boards and venture capital firms. So when I think about that, like this was a short article, I think this is going to happen a lot, but I think, like Claire said, starting with acknowledging the problem is good. So as much as I'd want to criticize this headline, I would say that, you know, it's at least a step in the right direction to form a task force in the first place, but having that task force more diverse and comprised of different perspectives is going to be paramount. So anyway, we should talk about how to make that and how to change that, but I think that starting that conversation is good.
Yeah. No one should be penalized for throwing their hat in the ring. You know, and I've been on that workout too with 1871. At least they put their hat in the ring. You know, I mean, I know they didn't quite do it right, but they put their hat in the ring and they're trying to help. You know, that's the thing. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, yeah, that's good. No, I was gonna say, I'm of the perspective that, like, we don't need, like, another task force to solve this problem. Like, we don't need a task force. Like, that's what, like, bugs me, I think, and, like, gets to me is, like, and you could say this for a lot of issues, but every time that there's some, like, societal problem, it's like, let's put together a task force, and they're gonna figure it out. Like, they're gonna take care of it. These people who are studying the issue and who are experts, and I just don't believe that shit. Like, I think the most important, this is what I'm really excited to talk about tonight, is there's so much that each of us in this room can do personally, like tomorrow, like tonight, to help make this a little bit better for people. Yeah, and so like I think that's what's important, is like I don't care about this task force. I don't care about any task force. Like I want to think about like what I can do. And what I've been thinking about, and particularly this is actually like a big realization for me this past year, is so I run a company called Know Your Company, and I co-own it with Basecamp. And that deal and transition happened a year ago, and I remember when that happened, it was really public, and I was really nervous and anxious and scared. I had all these eyeballs on me of like, oh, who's this person that got this company with, you know, all these users, you know, Airbnb, or customers are Airbnb, Kickstarter, Techstars, Jellyfish, you know, this really amazing company, like, and they just gave it to this girl. Like, that was my biggest fear, was like, people were just like, who the hell is this chick?
Called the imposter syndrome.
Thank you.
Very common among
Yeah,
women.
and it's not just for women, but it felt heightened because of that. And I remember very specifically, I was actually at a dinner. I think you were there. Amanda was there. So Amanda Lannert, the CEO of Jellyfish, she brought together a small group of women leaders in the tech industry, and I remember introducing myself to the fellow women, and I'll never forget this. Amanda was standing next to me, and I turned to someone and I was like, "Hi, like I'm Claire. It's really nice to meet you. I run a software product called Know Your Company." And Amanda goes, "No, you run a software company. You run a software company. You do not run a software product. You run a software company." And yeah, I will never make that mistake again. But it got me thinking a lot about just how individuals, you know, as women, how a lot, and it's not restricted to women. I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people feel, but how in a lot of small ways we hold ourselves back. in being concerned about the perception that other people will have of us, because that's what I was doing. I was like, well, I don't want to come across as like, I'm like, trying to be too salesy or like pushy, but it's like, no, that's the truth. I'm like the CEO of a company, like it's just what it is. I don't know what else you call it. Like, I don't know, so I think there's that, and just, I really, like, that's kind of my hope, is that we don't wait for task force to solve this, like we do something about it.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna just put in a pitch for the white males, because I work with a lot of them on the boards that I've been involved with, and there are some amazing white males out there who, I can remember I sat on a board with a white male who, he and I were having sort of a personal conversation, having coffee or something, and he said to me, he's like, every board should have at least one woman. And it's probably not a coincidence that this was a guy who was the #2 to Meg Whitman at eBay, and he's currently the chairman of Yahoo and hired Marissa Meyer to that role. So there are, to me, if the money is in the hands and the power and the decisions are in the hands of the white males, like, let's not vilify them. Let's find the ones that are champions, that are thinking about these issues, that are thinking about their, their wives and their daughters and possibly their mothers who have been successful, high-achieving, competent executives and founders, and, let's go work with those guys, right? So I don't know if the task force is going to come up with anything, but I will tell you, when I see that daily news brief come in that the NVCA curates, there's a lot of stuff in there about this gender issue. So I'm very encouraged by that.
Yeah, just can I add one quick comment? Just based on what Claire had said about like what can we do in this room, like task force is a task force. Like, okay, cool, another task force, but what can we do? What can I do? And as I thought more about that, I can't agree more about that, because for me, I made an interesting connection, and just really, like, even in prep for this event, it's been really helpful to participate, because it's really forced me to really pause and reflect and think about what am I doing actively to improve on this. And what I learned about what I can do in my school and what we have been doing, actually, I think translates really well to what people can do in the workplace, what company owners and people that are in positions of influence can do in the workplace, which is one of the interesting trends, like I said, is that a third of, I think, our alumni are women, which is, I think a lot of our other schools, like our software boot camps, are struggling to reach even that number. The lack of women in a lot of these programs in these software schools is so low, and one of the biggest questions is, okay, how did we get this far, and then how do we get further? And what I learned is that it's a lot about culture. So a lot of the programs expect you to stay and work until midnight each day. They expect the commitment that you're giving is almost impeding your ability to do other things, and depending on your lifestyle and your background, like say for instance we've taught a good number of moms in our program, they would not be able to participate in a expectation of staying overnight at these coding schools to go through these programs. So making our programs more accessible, making our hours flexible, making the curriculum and the timing of our events and classes in ways that will allow us to have a more diverse group of people that are going through the program, I think that carries over to the same thing with work. And if you have a work environment or a startup that the expectation is so unreasonable for people that aren't young, single, male, that other people can't participate in, that's going to exclude people. So I'm happy that, at least in looking at our data and our stories, that we've been able to accommodate more women, but I'm already the wheels are turning about how much more I can do to make that more accessible.
So on that note,